Welcome, I'm John Caldera, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. We've got an interesting little show for you tonight. First, let's celebrate autism. That's right, April is Autism Awareness Month. A whole month? That's a lot of awareness. From the Autism Society of Colorado, great to have you, Mikayla Hauser. Welcome. And Brian B., who is a self-advocate and also does some theatrical work.
And I'm an artist, that's right.
Explain the term self-advocate, because people don't get that term.
Sure. A lot of us know what advocating is, especially if you're a parent, right? You need to be able to advocate for your kid. If you're a self-advocate, then you've got some condition and you need to be able to speak up for yourself. And I'm a person diagnosed on the autism spectrum.
All right. Help me out with this, because I hear on the spectrum all the time. Well, he's on the autism spectrum. What does that mean? The spectrum from what to what?
Well, typically it's high functioning to low functioning, but it's now in line with the diagnostic range that the pediatricians give officially is autism spectrum disorder. So you could see an individual with autism that's...
Anything be simple? All right, help me out. Let's try
Not
this.
really.
Give me the quickest, easiest definition. Autism.
Sure.
What is it? Because I know there's more and more awareness of it. Give me the quick definition.
Quick definition, it's a neurological disorder that usually shows up very early on in life. As soon as the individual is diagnosed, early intervention is what's key to kind of help with the symptoms or things that come along with autism.
And you're born with it. This is not something that you acquire in your 30s or 40s, but ironically, there's a large population of people that are not officially getting diagnosed until their kid gets diagnosed.
So it typically shows up within social...
How does it show up? I mean, you have a child, and what's the sign?
Developmental milestones are not reached when a typical child would reach them. Either completely accelerated and then stop and go backwards like my son did, or they just don't reach them
Milestones like what?
I'm sorry?
Milestones like what?
Walking, talking, chatter, babble, eye contact.
Engagement with others.
So it usually shows up in social situations, not reading social cues or body language from their peers or anyone.
That's the interesting one, and it's tough. As I mentioned, I have a son who has Down syndrome, and he's also obviously delayed. And when you see him, he looks like a kid with Down syndrome. And you look at him and go, oh, I get it. I'm going to have to interact with this person a little differently than I do other folks. A lot of people with autism, you don't know it, at least from a visual cue, but they don't read social cues. They don't read nonverbal communication. So they can come across as being really rude, or you know, what's with that guy? Why is
Talk
he so
too
cold?
loud, not realize this, get in your space.
And it's like, what are you? And so
talk on and on.
Oh, then everyone I know has autism, if that's the case.
Well, careful. So, that's a joke. People say that.
So let me take it from your side. When were you diagnosed?
35.
35.
Mid-30s.
That's way
that's
late,
diagnosed
right?
on the autism spectrum. Yeah, it's pretty late, but I was also, you know, you're asking how does it show up when you're a kid? Well, for me it was, oh, he's got attention deficit. What do we do about that? Oh, well, he must have a Ritalin deficit. Let's give him that. I think it helped.
So they gave you
the
Ritalin.
Parents, maybe. I'm not sure it did me anything.
So
then later I'm diagnosed with depression. Then I'm diagnosed with trauma. Then I'm diagnosed with this, and that.
And then finally they say, you have autism. And is that the right diagnosis? Do you feel that's?
It's, yes. The other ones would explain a piece, but not explain the whole.
Explain to me what it's like being autistic. If you're trying to tell other people, it's like your world, but it's like this. What is this?
The main thing is that this is different from one person to one person. Have you ever heard this saying, if you know one person with autism, then you know one person with autism. So, oh, I saw Rain Man, I know what autism looks like, that's what it's like. No, that's what it can look like for that person. But for the next person, it can look so different. It can look so different.
So what does the world look like to you? Let's just talk about you.
So I'm an artist, often live and performing. I'm a singer-songwriter. As I told you, I do theater. And one of the things that happened with me, you know, in high school I had this long hair and it was like a curtain between me and the world. And I didn't interact with a lot of people. After I learned a variety of things about life and myself and where things going in this world, people, I said, I got to start interacting with people. And it was scary for me, but I kind of just went, I found that going right into the lion's mouth was actually less scary than being on the outside where the roar was. So as an artist, sometimes just getting on stage is actually less scary than being backstage.
So is it just that there are kids, I mean, I remember in high school there were kids that were loners. That was the weird kid. They kept to themselves, you know. And looking back, we go, wait, maybe that kid had autism. It's a very different world now.
Yeah, it could be. I think, you know, a few years ago when the rates went from 1 in 150 children with autism to 1 in 68 now, children.
Do that number again. From what to what?
It went from 1 in 150 to 1 in 110, and now we're at 1 in
68.
1 in 68.
Yeah.
And,
and I'm probably missing a couple of steps in between there. It's probably a lot of misdiagnosis. It's probably a lot of autism awareness and acceptance efforts from all of us in the nonprofit world. And
training and experience by the clinicians, so they knew how to identify it.
Right,
absolutely.
So let me ask you, is there more autism, or is it just now that it's getting diagnosed? In other words, go back 50 years, but is it the same amount?
Right.
What do you think?
I think we're diagnosing it better than we were before. I think that parents are paying attention to it more. I think that our pediatricians are more aware of what to look for, as well as our school systems. You know, 1 in 68 kids, that's a lot. That equates to 1 in 7 people that you interact with every single day has a direct tie.
The theories that you had vaccinations, and those vaccinations turned your kid autistic.
Nah.
Nah? You look skeptical. You say nah.
It could be a perfect storm of a whole lot of things. I'm a mother. I have an 18-year-old son who has Asperger's, which is on the autism spectrum. You know, as a parent, you have to let that go. My child is my child no matter what, and you have to empower these individuals with autism to be and live the best life as they define it possible.
But if a mom's out there and the pediatrician has said, well, it's time for the vaccinations, are you one of those people who say, don't do it?
Well, you know, I have 2 children, and that was a very personal decision for me. With my daughter, I made the personal decision with my partner at the time that I would rather have a healthy child with a disability than a child that would suffer from a life-threatening disorder instead. You know, you don't die from autism, you live and grow and thrive through it. You don't die from it.
So we're talking about autism awareness. So what is it, those of us who don't have autism, what is it we need to be aware of? What is this awareness? What do you want us to know?
Oh, what do we want you to know? That we're growing, that there's a lot more of us, and it may have worked at one time to go, I don't want to know about that, I want to see it, let me put it in a room, let me do life. But now, and like I said to you earlier, 80 to 90% of unemployment or underemployment, we want you to know that. We want you to know that we have some skills, and let's do something. Let's get out in our world, and let's find a bridge, and let's connect.
When you say that there's a spectrum, and that there's high functioning, there's less functioning, on the lower end of the scale, it's pretty obvious. When you see somebody who can't speak, you go, all right, I got this. Dealing with you, nobody would know that you have autism. Chatting with you, I would get no cue from you on that. So what am I supposed to do to be aware for guys like you? What is it that, you know? So we were having a conversation. I go, wow, he's a colorful guy.
Right.
Do I need to know anything more? Who cares if you're autistic?
So maybe for a shorter interaction, you don't. But for sustainability, for me, for intimate interactions, for vocation, then you got to know that my sleep and my digestion are really crazy, and that's going to affect my mood, and that's going to affect what time I show up to work sometimes, and my reliability.
So you're just making this crap up so you can be hungover and not go to work.
Exactly. You
Not
caught me.
bad.
You caught me. But at least you didn't catch
only
me
it were
on
that simple.
film.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. So, quite honestly though, what is it? It is hard to deal with people with autism for some of those reasons. That if you say that people with autism are underemployed, well, if you have, in your case, you might have a hard time getting to work on time. Well, if I need you on time, there's, I can see why there's underemployment problems.
I can speak to that. There's rigidity. There's loyalty. There is.
What do you mean rigidity?
Very rigid behaviors most of the time in adults with autism.
Like what? Give me one or two.
Habits and patterns.
Habits and patterns, kind of the path. This is the path that I always take because this is how I want to take it. And if you're going to divert me off this path, you need to give me time to process and think about how you want me to go about this path a different way.
I employ you. You're doing this pretty much every day, but today I'm going to need you to do something completely different.
Oh.
I don't want to. I better not spring that on you. I better let you know.
Absolutely.
And give you a little time to figure it out.
Yes.
And that's very common on the autism spectrum. Here's an example of the spectrum. I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum, doing a lot of public speaking and performing in live arts. I'm familiar with things changing at the last moment. I do improv theater, but I had to get there. And I still have times where, man, if you can give me a heads up, I'm going to do a lot better than if it just...
Brian is a wonderful advocate for himself because he advocates when he needs something. So if he knows that he doesn't communicate well via email, he will send a text to us and say, hey, I'm going to be texting you later. This is why. Don't email me because I probably won't be responding as quickly or as usually as I would. There's advocates like that in the world. There's also advocates that don't necessarily know how to advocate for themselves and their needs. So that could come across as they're being defiant, they're rude, they're reacting not in a socially acceptable way in a typical setting. So at the Autism Society of Colorado, we do a training, we have a program called Opening Doors. And part of that, we deal with the community and we also deal with employers. So we will go in and we'll train employers how to work well with individuals on the spectrum and also to work well with their caregivers. I am a caregiver. Sometimes I'll be the first to admit I'm high maintenance. I have things going on at home and sometimes I'm not going to be there right at 9 o'clock because I have a child that is dealing with changes in his schedule which sets our whole day off. So the prompting, the constant prompting of my son in order for him to engage and be productive that day is a lot of work for the caregiver too. So
that's why we have scotch.
That's right.
Yes.
Red wine.
So, all right, let's
Merlot.
Merlot. Cheap Merlot. All right, you've got a couple performances coming up. Real quickly, people want to see what you do, or people like you acting, performing. What should they do?
Sure.
Real fast.
Sure. Spoke and motion dance. The word spoke, the letter N like Nancy, motiondance.org is Colorado's own integrated dance company, fully professional, May 14th and 15th. At the Colorado Ballet, Saturday night, Sunday for a matinee. SpokenMotionDance.org, and then go to performances.
Perfect.
Please come.
People want to get to the Autism Society. Where do they go?
It's autismcolorado.org. They can call our office at any time. We have a wonderful English and Spanish Autism Navigation Center. We serve everyone across Colorado and into Wyoming, neighboring states too. And they can call us on and off the spectrum. Anything to do with autism, we're there to help.
Terrific. Thank you both. Stay tuned.